welcome to the Sacred Femme Alchemy Podcast, a podcast to help you on your sacred feminine journey towards self-love and healing. I'm your host, Lisa Mae Francisco, a sacred feminine guide and mentor. In the podcast, we'll dive deep on how to heal your core wounds, reclaim your feminine power, and liberate your truth so you can be your wild, authentic self. Thanks so much for listening. I'm super excited that you're here. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sacred Femme Alchemy Podcast. I am so excited to be here. This is actually going to be my last episode for a while. I am going to take a break from creating podcast episodes, from recording, just because right now I'm in this season where I really want to integrate. And that is what my body has been craving. I've been recording episodes weekly, either solo episodes or having guests ever since I got back from my first tantric yoga training back in the fall, and just really diving deep into these feminine concepts. And so it occurred to me that where I'm at seasonally in my life, in my business, is I want to go inwards. and I want to reevaluate. And so there are a lot of stuff in the works behind the scenes of how I want to change my business, my offerings, how I want to show up, what platforms I want to be on. And so I really want to just take this time to honor the void, the silence, the void, which a lot of us are sometimes often afraid of, because there's this conditioning from this hypermasculine world to always be on, to always be doing, to always be posting, to sell, all of that stuff. And for me, I just want to honor the femininity, the nature, that cycle of just taking a pause and knowing that I need it and I want it. And it has occurred to me in the last week. And so I'm recording my last episode. And today I am coming off fresh from facilitating the women's circle on the full moon in Sagittarius, which we just had. And I actually didn't even have a specific topic, but I said, okay, you know what? Monday's coming up. It's going to be the last Monday of the month, and I want to take a break from podcasting, and I don't want to come back until the fall. And so we'll see what happens. And I guess that's the beauty of really connecting and tuning into your intuition and to that feminine nature and honoring our seasons and our cycles. And that's what really came up to me when I started facilitating the women's circle. It was around the inner feminine. And so this month in the Sacred Femme Alchemy membership, which I launched publicly, and every single month I create a theme, whether it's a theme that I see happen in the collective, whether it's a theme that I see happening with my clients, or just a theme that's coming up from me, from inside, that I really want to share and teach on and connect with people on, is something that does come up for me. And so this particular theme for May, that aligned with the launch of the Sacred Femme Alchemy membership, was about healing the inner feminine. And what does it mean to heal the feminine? And we looked at the feminine in many different ways. So the first event that I did was our tapping circle, and that was focused on the sister wound. So we looked at it all from different lenses. So we looked at it through the sister wound, right? Because one of the most important ways that you can actually heal the feminine is by looking at a relationship to the other feminine in your life. Whether you had a sister, a best friend, a mother, or you as a daughter. And so being able to look at the lens of the feminine through all of those three archetypes or figures, you really get to unearth and really see, what is your experience in relationship like with those dynamics, and how do they affect you? And so the first event that I did was a tapping circle, and it was a tapping circle on how do you heal the sister wound? How do you connect to other sisters? How do you release jealousy, competition, and just really release that narrative? And then the second event I did was a Divine Feminine workshop on how to really nurture your own inner mother. And so we really had to look at what was our relationship like to our own mother. And I categorized all the different ways of how your relationship with your mother really influences you, whether you can be overly feminine. So maybe you were taught to be this woman who nurtured others before you, and you look at other relationships as your purpose in life, and that without serving others or catering to others, over giving and nurturing others, that there's no sense of you being around, right? And so sometimes what happens is codependent relationships, wanting someone to need you so that you feel like you belong. And so maybe you're overarching on those feminine traits of being a giver, being very nurturing. And sometimes this can be categorized by other people as, oh, this is so smothering, you know? And then the other ways of connecting to the feminine through the mother archetype is through looking at your mother and saying, oh, what if there were qualities that you didn't like about her? So maybe your mother was too emotional and you're just like, oh, I can't be too emotional. I don't want to be like her. So I'm just going to stuff my emotions. I'm going to suppress them, and I'm not going to share anything until I've processed them so that people can't see me as a hot mess. And so maybe that's something you picked up. So there's a lot of qualities that you didn't like in your mother. And so you just shunned those qualities and you chose to disassociate and not identify. And so those qualities don't become integrated in you. And then another one, and then that also forces you to connect more to the masculine. And you're like, okay, let me just be my masculine, because seeing my mom as a feminine, just that's not for me. That's not for me. And so you over-identify, maybe you become a tomboy, or you relate more to what your father likes. And so those are some of the ways that we looked at how our own relationship with our mothers actually affected us. And it was a really potent experience because we had an opportunity to bridge it. And so once you're able to look at, this was my past, and this is the new paradigm of where I want to go, and this is how I want to integrate it, how do I do it? You start to cultivate and connect to your own inner mother, and you start to mother yourself. And so for a lot of people, it can be really difficult to become the inner mother, to embody this mother, because maybe they don't have children or they don't know how to do that. And so what I often tell them is, just speak to yourself as if you're speaking to your nephew or your niece. Speak to yourself as if a little child is coming up to you. So it's very easy for us to console other people, but it's harder for us to console ourselves because our inner judge is up, our inner critic is coming to the forefront, and it just becomes even more difficult. And so by learning to tap into that well of, okay, my heart, my love, my compassion, I can now give that to myself. And so that's actually one of the ways that you can resource yourself when you want to invoke the inner mother. And so it was just such a beautiful practice because we did a visualization around how do we want to feel, right? So we looked at our relationship to our own mothers, and then realizing I can be my own mother. I can also connect to source, the great Mother Earth, infinite power, higher power, and really feel that connection and get all the things that I need and tune into that spirit and energy rather than thinking about the things that I didn't get. And so it's a way to take back your power. It's a way for you to feel liberated because you're no longer relying on your own parents, which are also soul contracts, to give you those things that you crave, because you can now give it to yourself, right? So it lets everyone off the hook. It lets the old dynamic slowly dissolve. It allows you to feel empowered and liberated, that if you choose to invite them into your life in the dynamic, that you're choosing from a place that is yours rather than, oh, this was a contract, right? And so by looking at that, by learning to invoke and connect to the great mother, you can create like transformational change because you are allowing yourself to bridge the gap of your past. And what I've been learning in my Kundalini yoga training is that the past, the present, and the future are always happening. It's always happening in the same timeline. So you're responding to the past You're creating the future with the present moment and your thoughts, right? So the past created the present, and the present right now is creating the future. So it's all happening in the same timeline. And it's been a really potent month. And I think what wants to come out of me right now is reflecting on what's happened as I've started sharing this, as I've started connecting to this on a deeper level. And behind the scenes, I'm doing a lot of different things to connect to the feminine. And what really jump-started it was my tantric yoga training, which allowed me to open up to this world of the Hindu goddesses and deities, which is ultimately, I knew of Shakti. I could describe her, but I didn't understand how to know her. I didn't understand how to feel her. Like, I could cerebrally understand her, but feeling her was something different. And when it comes to Shakti, which is the divine feminine energy, she is the expression, right? She is the embodiment. She is the energy. And Shiva is the consciousness, right? It's very cerebral. It's a container. And when I reflect and I look back on the journey that I've been up until this point, I'm always amazed. I am amazed. And I find that I'm the type of person that doesn't necessarily reflect as much or celebrate any milestones. But today, something really came through the circle tonight. And the circle was a continuation of healing the inner feminine. And it was about Demeter and Persephone. And it was combining those two archetypes that we've been working with, except really honing in on the maturation of the Maiden, Kori, which is Maiden, which means maiden, and how she becomes Persephone, the queen of the underworld, the goddess of the underworld. And as I was prepping and I was reading this story again, the first time that I read it, I really resonated with the mother Demeter. And behind the scenes, as soon as I came back from this tantric yoga training, I ended up diving really deep into the feminine mysteries. And so I found a yantra training because I was really intrigued by how to use yantra for my own japa meditation and really invoke the goddess spirit, the Hindu goddess spirit, through these yantras, which are sacred geometry. And then I ended up doing a sacred feminine elemental course of working with the different elements: fire, water, air, ether, earth, to work with those elements and be the CEO of those elements, and how to create and manifest this life that I want to live. And so being really in tune and close to nature, which is also very much a tantrika way of being and living. And then I also found, to connect to this consciousness, this idea of really transcending consciousness, that we're not our thoughts, we're not our upbringing, we're not our conditioning. Who are we? But connecting to our own divinity. I found a teacher who is teaching about rainbow light body activation. And so what does it mean to really purify and get more into your light body, and working with different gates of like your physical body and just all of that stuff. And so it was funny because I created this mystery school curriculum for myself where I found 3 different teachers, and it wasn't necessarily like I was seeking it out. It was more of my energy was matching the things that I wanted and needed, and I became like a fucking magnet for everything that I wanted. And so that was like the power of Lakshmi, because I was working with the Lakshmi goddess when I was in my tantric yoga training. We were just invoking her spirit and her fertility and abundance and blessings and boons in our life. And so my match became a match for all of these teachings that I wanted that I was just hungering for. And so what ended up happening was I was doing that, and then as I really wanted to just come out more and share. And I often talk about that fear of, who am I to teach about this stuff? I don't know, and I don't trust myself, or I'm not feminine enough, or I don't know as many techniques as other women. And the thing that I had to really overcome was, but I am a woman. I am a woman, and my experience is my experience. And so my experience suffices. It's not like me portraying to be anybody else. It is my experience. That is the truth. And that's what I'm sharing. And that's the offering, and that's the gifts, and that's the teachings, right? and you have your own unique experience and circumstances in your life that create you to be this special person to deliver this message in a way that someone else needs to hear only from you. And so I had to really overcome that belief that I didn't know what I was doing and that my experience didn't count for anything, because I felt such like a new beginner. I felt very green in this space. And sure, it was me looking at my spirituality through a different lens, through the sacred feminine path. I would say I've been on this spiritual road for the last 13 years, but it's really in the last year where I really dove into what does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to embody this? What are the qualities? What it means to honor your cycles? What does it mean to connect to the different in a very different way? And it's so refreshing and I absolutely love it. And how do you connect with Shakti energy, which is the life force within all of us that allows us to also heal and use it as a spiritual tool, right? To connect with, to really awaken your own power and your infinite potential that you can tap into, and you can create a path and a way for everything that you want in your life that you want to manifest in this world. Everything is possible. And as I started to develop my own mystery school curriculum, I got up the courage to create and do women's circles. And I got certified in how to do women's circles just because I didn't believe that I could. And so I did, right? I did. And I remember researching the goddess Inanna. And I came across this program that was about connecting to all the different feminines through myths, and it's a 9-month program. And so I ended up starting it. And one of the goddesses that we connected to was the story of Demeter and Persephone. And when I first heard it back in winter, I really connected to the mother, because during that time, if you connect back to my different episodes, I talk about the initiation of my own, of like being into motherhood, of when I like really wanted to be a mother. And I connected so much with Demeter of, oh my gosh, when she lost Corey, when she lost Persephone, and she felt very lost, and like what it is to lose a child and being so close. And at that time, I was actually watching Gilmore Girls. And in Gilmore Girls, it's Lorelai and Rory, which rhymes with Corey. And Rory is actually the maiden in that story, and Lorelai is the mother. And so it's very interesting to see these parallels of what was happening in my life at that time when I was watching or listening and studying the goddesses, the Greek goddesses, Demeter and Persephone. And every time that you get into myths, and that's why I love using myths in storytelling, is that when you start to read or when you hear a myth, it evokes something in you that's different from the first time. That's why they're so complex, because you meet them at the level of where you are. You meet them at the level of your consciousness. And so when I first read it and heard it, it was just very much me being connected to the mother archetype, because I wanted to be a mom so much. I still do, right? But and then as I started preparing for the circles, something came up that was very different. And it was understanding the role, the pivotal, integral role of the masculine when it comes to a woman's maturation and transition from maiden to mother, right? And it made me think, oh, wow. Hades took her in the underworld. And initially I thought, oh my gosh, the patriarchy, the rape of the collective, the feminine, telling me what to do with my body, telling me how to live my life, living in a hypermasculine world. And at that point, when I was so focused on the feminine, I almost became like a man hater. There was so much aggression that came out, and not really understanding of what is like the patriarchal suppression around the women. What does that actually mean? And understanding that it does have its effect on me, but on a subconscious level, and not even being aware of it. And so sure, you can identify with, how to heal your feminine through your own experiences, but then there's also the collective experience of what's happening to you that isn't necessarily direct. And so it was so interesting to have that perspective of being so embedded in the feminine and not even realizing and recognizing the part that we actually do need the masculine. And so that's what came up for me at this point, recently, as I started preparing for the women's circle tonight. And, initially what happened was I just thought, oh my gosh, like Corey's raped, she's abducted. I can't believe her father sold her off and allowed Hades, her uncle, to just get her and she can just be part of the underworld and the mother doesn't even know and they're best friends. Like I was really like vying for the femininity side. I was like totally all about that. I was super feminist and I can't believe her dad. Da, da. And then what really got to me was because I was working with my dream analyst at the time, and she said to me, and she gave me this new perspective of when Hermes is down there and he is told that he has to bring her back to the upper world, and he asks Persephone, oh, do you want to go back? He actually sees her really radiant and glowing and becoming this queen of the underworld who's helping the spirits cross over and transition. And she loves it there and she's thriving. And so that really implies that this Kori, who has become Persephone when she's queen of the underworld, has her own life beyond her mother, has her own life beyond the bubble. And so initially, when she is in this bubble where it's just her and her mother, it's very codependent. It's very toxic. It's like they can't exist without the other. And when she's gone into the underworld, Demeter loses herself. Her radiance goes away. Her hair is tattered and matted. Like her clothes are just dirty. Like she loses herself because her identity is only mother. And because she's so sad, it creates fall and winter for the people instead of harvest and fertility and abundance and joy and all of that stuff. And it really forces you to look at how that relationship affected each person and how it was necessary for the individuation of Kori to become Persephone, to become the woman that she needed to be without her mother, and that it took the masculine. Even though it was in a really aggressive way of like how he fucking abducted her. But if you look at it in the sense of that part was necessary. And it made me reflect on a time in my life when I felt like I was very much in my bubble. And then all of a sudden I had my high school boyfriend. And it was, when you think about going to the underworld, it's something that's taboo. It's wild. It's foreign. It's a place you don't go to. It's mysterious. It's dark. And it can be equated to drugs, sex, all the taboo stuff that you're so naive to as a child, and you get exposed to this in the underworld and you learn how to integrate it. And before Persephone leaves the underworld to go back to the upper world, she does eat the pomegranate seeds. And there's this moment where her mother notices the shift and the change and the loss of innocence and asks her, did you eat something from the underworld? And as every mother knows, there's that loss of innocence with your child, whether you know they've had sex, whether you know they're so high from doing drugs, or when they become married, right? Losing that innocence and just leaving. And so it's how do you integrate and understand and accept that will happen with your child? And also, how do you integrate that within yourself? And even though the pomegranate seeds that Persephone ate allows her to have to go back into the underworld for 6 months out of the year for fall and winter, and then come back to the upper world for spring and summer with her mother, it also represents the integration that one must do after they enter the underworld to take it to the upper world, right? That's integration. That's a part of you. And that's the feminine cycle of knowing that it ebbs and flows. That lightness and dark cannot exist without the other. There's equal lightness as equal darkness. And so in order to integrate the two, you have to be in both places. You can't just be in spring and summer all the time, like all day long, all year long. There has to be both. There has to be decomposition. There has to be this time for going inwards. And so I feel like when I was doing this circle, it just really evoked this sort of softness, this healing around the masculine. And it was interesting because when we were also studying in that program, Isis, it was very much about the masculine. And I remember my analyst said, what's your relationship to the masculine? Because it just didn't do anything for me. I was so excited to read Isis. There are so many women who are doing these Isis pilgrimages and priestesses of Isises going to Egypt. And I was so excited. And then I heard the story and I thought, what? That's it? It's just about a man. Like, a woman who's lost and sad about her husband, and it's about the coming together of resurrecting and rebirth and sacred sexuality and all of these things. And we'll listen to that story again because I'm sure it'll awaken something in me, because preparing for this circle really softened me, because I got to understand why the man was actually necessary in the maturation of Corey to becoming Persephone and her individuation journey. And I can actually reflect and see how that was so pivotal for me. And so it gave me a different lens of how to accept that, how to soften that, and how to integrate that. And it's so perfect because next month in our membership in Sacred Femme Alchemy, we are going to look at how to heal the inner masculine. And so that's looking at all the different wounds that we have with our own masculine, whether it's a brother, friend, any male family member, your father, any of that stuff. And so it's really beautiful to come to this space of kind of full circle, really seeing that. And I was not expecting that at all from this myth of Demeter and Persephone, because it's so focused on the mother-daughter. But what I gleaned from it was that masculine piece that I didn't even have a purview to until recently, like until this past week. And so it was just really beautiful to see it come full circle. And I feel like there are so many different things that you can glean from this story. And it's just so beautiful, so deep, and so complex. And I'm just feeling so grateful, so grateful. And I'm really enjoying this space that I'm in. And I am enjoying this opportunity to connect to my heart deeper. You know, what I'm realizing more and more is that the path of the feminine is really learning to connect to your heart, learning to connect to your body, learning to connect to your spirit, learning to connect to your womb, and really trusting your inner guidance, your inner oracle, and knowing that you have this infinite power, that you have this creative power within you, and that you're born with it, you know, that you have this womb, whether it's the energetic womb, whether it's a physical womb. Everyone has the womb chakra in it. And I just feel so grateful and connected to spirit, and that I am where I am today. And oftentimes, I think for my not whole life, that's such a loaded statement. A lot of times when I was younger, there was this desire to be somewhere else, not be where I was planted. And just what does it look like to really enjoy the journey instead of the destination? And be grateful and celebrating every single moment of where I'm at, and seeing everything that has led me to this place of creating my own mystery school, the feminine mystery school for myself, and being able to share and teach these teachings with other people, whether it's learning about the different feminine archetypes, whether it's doing EFT tapping and somatic healing on any of your feminine wounds, and whether it's working and energizing and connecting to that energy of Kundalini Shakti, whether it's doing tantric practices. It just feels really beautiful. And so being able to connect to that, I'm super excited, because a lot of the programs that I'm in, even my Kundalini yoga training, will be wrapping up soon in the summer. And being able to take time to fully commit and devote myself for the remaining months is a desire of mine. And so when I prioritize something, I know that I have to let something go. Just as what the theme has always been, when there is a birth, there is a death that is present. And recognizing that. And one of the things that keeps coming up as a lesson in my life, and especially in different teachings that I have, is really understanding that there is nothing afraid of. I don't have to be afraid of death. Figurative, literal, I'm still working on that. Literal, I'm still working on that. But being okay and accepting the equal beauty of the blessing and also the death. And when you learn to see the beauty, when you learn to see divinity, when you learn to see the goddess in everything, that is that perspective of holiness. that everything in your life is sacred, that everything in your life can be a ritual, that everything in your life is very holy. And even though it might feel uncomfortable, there is a lesson that you must learn from it. The other day, I was with a client and we were working on releasing our relationships, honoring different endings and chapters in our life. And the beautiful thing that we got to do was be able to transmute it. And we got to transmute it towards the light. And so by able to have a different perspective, to understand that there is divinity in everything, that there's always a lesson in everything, no matter how hard the situation is, are you able to, as my teacher shares about all the time, get the diamonds from everything? And are you able to see that? That's a divine perspective. And that's why I was always taught when I open a class to bring my hands to my third eye, to open it for divine consciousness. Because when we open our eyes with divine consciousness, we expand it beyond the ego. The ego is no longer present. It's your true self that's directing. And so learning to lead with that, and then bringing our hands down to heart center. And what does it mean to expand our heart frequency? What does it mean to connect from that space and grow from that space and radiate from that space? And knowing that when we unite, when we are in union with our masculine and feminine in the heart chakra, that's when we're truly divine. Merging from bottom to top. And so thank you so much for being part of my journey. Thank you for listening to the episodes. Thank you for following me on social. Maybe you subscribe to my newsletter. Maybe you watch my TikTok. Maybe you watch my podcast on YouTube. Maybe you've been to one of my free events, but that is actually also ending too, my free EFT tapping circles. And so even though I reached a year in business, I feel like I'm just coming full circle of, I did a bunch of experiments. What is the thing that I really want to hone in on? And so I'm excited for this next chapter to really reflect and dive in deeper into what lights me the fuck up, to really share it and come out and be strong and be excited about it. And so I have a lot of stuff that I'm doing behind the scenes. And even though I won't be here on the podcast sharing as much, you can definitely tune in to previous episodes. And of course, there is always an opportunity to work with me. I do have a wait list for one-on-one mentorship, so I will leave it in the show notes of signing up. There's a way to apply with me, or you can DM me, email me, let me know you're interested. But that's either in 3-month or 6-month containers. And then there's obviously my Sacred Femme Alchemy membership. So those are the 2 ways that you can work with me, is through my membership. It's a monthly membership where we dive into different themes related around the feminine archetypes. Each month you get a divine feminine workshop, you get a live Kundalini yoga session, you get a women's full moon circle, and you get group coaching. And there's also this community and a sacred feminine portal of on-demand teachings. And so you get all of that. And so it's beautiful. I love that offering. I put my heart and soul into that. It's been something that I've been dreaming up for a long time. And so it's really exciting for me to share that offer and to have you join our community of women who are really empowered to be on the path and do the inner work and really awaken to their own divinity, because that is what it's about. Because when you are in your power, I am in my power, and future generations are in their power, and we heal generations back. Okay. And so I will share all of that in the show notes. And I'm so, so excited for this next chapter. Thank you for supporting me, and feel free to comment on this episode, leave a review. Would love to hear from you, what you loved, what nuggets you took away, whatever resonated, what insights you had. And I look forward to seeing you all when I am back from my break this summer. And hopefully, if you follow me on my newsletter, just sign up for my newsletter. That's where I share everything. Or follow me on social, Instagram at Sacred Femme Alchemy for both TikTok and Instagram. But definitely sign up for my newsletter. It's the best way to keep in touch and understand and see and know what's happening first with all the different offerings I have. So I'm just super excited to share, but I'm going to enjoy this time of being in the void and just really relishing in this death and culmination and celebration and putting it into this cauldron and seeing what comes up for spring. So I love how it ties into the Persephone of going to spring, going into fall and winter. And this is the full moon of Sagittarius. And so it's really about a time that I heard it's like the most auspicious full moon, because it's a time where you get to really plant your seeds and think about, what do I actually want to come as a manifestation into my life? And so I love that. But thank you so much for tuning in and supporting. And of course, I will catch you on another episode of Sacred Femme Alchemy, and I'd love to have you be a part of my membership or work with me one-on-one, get on the wait list. All right, I will talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.